All right, here with reaction, Pennsylvania Democratic Senator, the only elected Democrat that has been outspoken against the shift in his own party, the only one, no other elected Democrat. Now, there have been other Democrats like Joe Manchin, Bill Maher, James Carville, Van Jones, Mark Penn, but the only elected Democrat is the one on your screen, John Fetterman. Why is the silence so deafening among your other Democrats?
Well, I mean, they're afraid of them, honestly. I mean, they can say that in politics. You can define what you're afraid of is if you're unwilling to criticize them. So now, like, I think it's entirely appropriate. I think it's a responsibility as a Democrat to call this out. But I just like to remind everybody watching right now, you know, Bernie Sanders will never represent any more than 640,000 people in Vermont. That's all he's ever done, and he ever will do. You know, he's never won an actual competitive election. And now why can't, stop giving me lectures on how to win. You know, Bernie's not flipping seats. He is helping install volatile and dangerous kinds of candidates and now put, Democratic seats at risk. I've flipped seats. Now, he's never done that thing. I'm tired of his lectures, overall. And now he claims that he's not a member of the Democratic Party. Why can't the DSA people just, they should just run and there's their own party. And now I think it's important to remind people, who is driving a lot of this conversation. And now, I see that Chris Rabb's coming up, later. He represents literally the bluest district in the country now. And he's going to have extreme views that he couldn't go anywhere beyond just this district there.
Well, let me ask you about this. One thing more about Bernie Sanders. I mean, you cannot deny his endorsement, AOC's endorsement, has been the most successful of any Democrat that has been out there endorsing this election season. I think he is definitely consciously, by going on the Fight the Oligarchy tour, he's passing his communist socialist mantle, if you will, to AOC. And now it's showing up in that New Hampshire poll where she would be the leading 2028 presidential candidate. It seems like Bernie's having an impact on these primaries in a major way. Well, that's one thing to win a primary, but what about a general election? Can these people win?
Well, but my point is he's not flipping seats. And it's not that long ago that he got, Plattner shoved up his
say it. Don't worry about it.
You can't say it. No. But, he really had the Plattner disaster, and he's responsible for these kind of things. He's not flipping seats. He's installing unstable and these kinds of people that put Democratic seats at risk now in Michigan. Now it's undeniable. So it's like he's giving advice, how do you can't flip seats.
Well, what would you like to see as the future for your Democratic Party? And I know, a lot of people said that the line in the sand that you've drawn as it relates to Israel, that is your line, that the party, but there is an anti-Semitic wing that has emerged within the Democratic ranks. There's even one on the new right, if you want to be honest, although it's not as loud, and I don't think it's as outspoken, and I don't think it's as institutionalized. So my question to you is, as you hear all of these positions, for example, all these DSA candidates, there'll be 40. They want to eliminate the Senate. They want to choose the president and judges, amnesty for illegals, abolish borders, abolish ICE. They want to defund the Department of War, dumb, end all deportation, eliminate cash bail, establish a wealth tax, cradle to grave Green New Deal, abolish prisons, abolish police, public ownership of most corporations. Now, Senator, I think I know you pretty well. I don't think you believe any of that.
I really don't know, but they're not ashamed to say these kinds of things. Abolish all of those things that they're not viable. And now Said, he just won. And I just want to issue a dare. Continue to campaign with Hassan Piker right now. You're in a general election now. I dare you. Keep campaigning with someone like Hassan Piker. if I was a Republican, I would just dump $20 million for ads. He pals around with Piker, the guy that, on the 25th anniversary of 9/11, my best friend says America deserved 9/11, and you're going to try to win a general election. So that's, how can he reconcile the outlandish thing that he said, and his record, and I'd also remind people that the vast majority, well, the majority of Michigan Dems picked someone other that wasn't El Sayed, he barely won by 14,000 votes. And if McMorrow wasn't in that race, without a doubt, he would have lost that. So he's not had a big night. He did one, but overall, remind people, the majority of Michigan Democrats picked someone other than he is.
Well, you look at Mike Rogers, distinguished Army vet, FBI special agent. He was chairing the House Intel Committee, 14 years in Congress, pro-America. I think the people of Michigan are pretty smart, and I have a lot of faith in them. They remind me a lot of the hardworking people in your state of Pennsylvania. Senator Fetterman, we always appreciate your time. Thank you, sir, for being with us.